to Dice Over Everything.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Alan, and this is take 2 of episode 1.
Yes, the original version of episode 1 was amazing, but no one's ever going to get to listen to it. So
it was all stuttering.
It was, but we have the same topic though. We have the same game going in the background. So Alan, do you want to introduce what we're playing today?
Yes, we will be playing the best sci-fi game out there in our opinion, Infinity.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so what else do you want to talk about?
In this podcast? I think we want to talk about sort of what is Infinity for people that don't have that much experience with it, what makes it good, what gets people into it, how to get other people into it if you're already into it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. And also, we'll have a game playing in the background, and we'll be talking a little bit about the actual game, and you can see a game being played out there. So here, if you are looking at the imagery, is my force. I'm bringing Yu Jing, and this is my Yu Jing army. As you can see, there's like, I don't know, was it 10, 13 guys? I don't even remember how many guys I brought.
You had 2 order pools.
Yeah. The problem with this picture is I put more stuff than I actually was bringing, just so that Brandon didn't know what I was going to bring.
It's kind of helpful. In Infinity, you can put some fake stuff down as well, because there's
so cool.
There's things that jump on during the game,
so that way you don't actually know what you're going to see, even when you're looking at your opponent's army. So yeah,
you had a whole lot of heavy stuff in that army.
Yeah, I did. So I did have the Xian and the Dao Fei, which are the 2 heavies, which was the linchpin of my army. And I had a bunch of hidden guys that could hopefully hold you back. That didn't end up working. Spoilers.
Yeah, the cheap guys actually worked really well. Your monks?
Oh yeah, monks are awesome. Yeah, so this is Yu Jing. Yeah, they look great.
Yep.
Every single time I see this picture, I'm really happy. I'm like, oh man.
I know. The whole game looks great. Like, your guys look great. The board looks great. I'll take credit for the board, but...
I'll take credit for the painting of my minis, but a lot of it is just that they're awesome sculpts.
So if people are curious where the terrain's from, a lot of it's micro arts, like the Matt's micro arts. The green acrylic stuff, lots of micro arts. So there's lots of like third-party manufacturers that make really good-looking stuff for Infinity out there now, which is like a big incentive to play the games, to have a really cool-looking board to play on. All right, so now we've switched over to my Onyx army that's part of the combined army, so it's the sectorial I like to play.
They're aliens.
They are aliens. They're robot aliens. So how I like playing Onyx is bringing a lot of hidden things, so stuff your opponent won't see on the board. Like, if you see on top of the roof in the back, there's that girl with the wings, so that's a fracta. It drops on from possibly the side of the board, possibly drops right in the middle of the board during the game.
And you won't even know that your enemy is bringing that piece.
Nope.
Which was very bad for me in the game as well.
Yes, and the 2 little frogmen beside it are Malignos, which you can deploy in a hidden state. So they're somewhere on the board. Their location's predetermined, but like, your opponent doesn't know where you've put them. They've got to leave the room, or you've got to write it down. There's lots of ways of keeping track of it.
I think that's one of my favorite parts about Infinity, that you don't know what's coming, and you can do these secret things, and you can play these head games that are often not in other games like War Machine or Games Workshop games, 40K. You know when you start the game what your opponent is bringing. But for this one, you have a lot of hidden information, which it just makes the game feel more dynamic and more exciting when you're playing it.
Yeah. So a lot of the rest of the army is the Unidrons, which are kind of their basic line troopers. They're robots that can take one shot and keep standing afterwards. They're pretty tough line troopers. I've armed them with 2 long-range weapons, a missile launcher and a plasma sniper rifle, both nice and deadly.
And you bring them in a cheaty sectorial link team.
Yep. So as sectorials, they have bonuses for putting a whole collection of guys together, which they get a lot of bonuses that people might not consider playing without when you take a team of 5. It's
very, very hard when you start the game. You'll think link teams are broken. And then when you play a little bit, you're like, oh, they're definitely broken. But it doesn't mean that they're like overpowered, actually.
Yep,
even though they're really good.
Now, if you're watching this, the game has started, and I am on the left, and Alan's on the right. So for this game, we're playing what I would consider possibly the most quintessential of all missions, Supremacy. Yep. So do you want to give a bit of a description of what's going on in this mission?
Yeah, sure. So Supremacy is a mission that has 2 different things that kind of have all the parts of missions in Infinity. So Infinity is a really, really mission-focused game.
Definitely.
So you bring your special ops team, which is like 10 to 20 guys, usually around like 13 or 14 guys, depending on the army. And there's two things generally you want to do. Either you want to get mission objectives, things like terminals or something like that, or you want to hold ground. Obviously, this is pretty common in a lot of miniatures games.
Yeah, Infinity, I would say, stresses less the killing of your opponent. Like many miniature games, to take the territory, it's really based around just killing your opponent to get them out of the zone. In this one, movement's a bit more of it, so tactics become very, very important in the game.
Yeah, especially since to control an area, you just need more points worth of guys in it. So you don't have to kill everyone out of your territory, you just have to control it with more guys. So what that ends up meaning is that to win the missions, you often don't have to kill your guys, get them out of there, kill your opponent's guys. You just have to not die and have more guys there, which I guess that's in a bunch of other games. But it's heavily emphasized in Infinity. You don't have to kill anyone. Like oftentimes, your force will be wiped out and you can still win the game.
Yeah, if your opponent focuses too much on if your opponent focuses too much on the killing, too little on the mission, they could massacre you off the board, but have forgotten to do what they were supposed to do, and that's the end of it. They lose.
Yeah, so there's like a lot of missions, and in this one, like we said, it's a standard mission. Basically, there's 4 different zones, so you divide the board up into 4 pieces, besides the deployment zones,
so
and those are the things you want to control.
So the middle 24 inches is divided into 4, so we're trying to get our guys into the middle, which brings them into killing range, and the objectives are sort of in the middle of the board too. So in this game, we rolled off for who goes first. I think I won the roll and chose to go second.
Yeah, and then I was lazy and decided to deploy on my side.
Yes.
Which, after looking at it, might not have been the best move. At the same time, though, I just wanted to play the game.
Yep, so
I'll often do that. It's fun when you're playing against newer players, but when you're playing against people that know how to play the game, sometimes it's terrible.
If you give them an advantage, they'll use the advantage, and then they'll kind of win.
Yeah.
So when I stop blocking the camera here, off on the left-hand side of the board,
out of there.
There's kind of a little fire base near the bottom left-hand side of where you can see that I put the Unidrons with their nice long-range weapons, so it forced people to come into their sights.
And that could have been my fire base if I was smarter and decided to take that deployment zone.
It could have, and this was key later on in the game, as I think Alan will describe, because he goes first. And the other advantage, actually, in missions where you've got to control areas in Infinity is that in a lot of games that are based around killing, you want to go first, get the jump on your opponent, kill the crap out of them. But in this game, where it's more based around controlling zones, there's more of a balance towards wanting to go second, because then you'll have seen your opponent who goes first move into the zones.
And you know exactly how many points he has in the zones, and you can just move a guy into that zone that's worth more points, and you will score that zone.
Yeah, because the scoring happens at the end of the second player's turn in every mission.
And what's great about Infinity is because there's so much terrain, like you're supposed to play with a lot of terrain. What that means is a lot of it is maneuvering around so you don't actually get shot.
Yeah, you're trying to maneuver to good firing lanes, you're trying to maneuver to good firing ranges.
A lot of winning is just moving to a place where while they can't see you and shoot you.
Yep.
Which is very different than other things. And I guess the reason why is these two different things within Infinity is the order system and the arrow system. How this works with terrain.
Yeah, so in a lot of games, with how each individual unit moves, say in War Machine, say in 40K, maybe Malifaux as well, that
most games.
Yep, most war games have, like, for every turn you have, one guy gets one activation to usually move and then shoot. Infinity's quite a bit different since it's got basically your order pools, which amount to up to 10 people in each group, and as we said before, you take maybe 10 to 20 people, so you might have 2 order pools, but any one guy can have the entire pool spent on activating them over and over.
Yeah, so instead you get a number of orders for how many guys you have, and instead of having to have each guy move individually, let's say you have 10 orders because you have 10 guys, you can spend those 10 orders on one guy. So one guy can move 10 10 times as opposed to each guy moving once. And that's a huge difference. And it's super powerful, and one of my favorite things about it is you can flank the enemy, which hardly ever happens in other games unless you have special units.
Yeah, and like War Machine and 40K, you see your opponent's army on the other side of the board. You know they're just going to kind of come straight at you. You've got your
steamroller, basically. It's like two people trying to run up and
headbutt each. It's just
exactly.
like two deer trying to just headbutt each other on the board is what the games often look like.
Yeah, because you just don't have the ability to move around the guys.
Yep.
Or Infinity is very different because you're allowed to spend multiple orders. If you have 5 guys holding the fort in your deployment zone, you can spend 2 orders on other guys and kind of move around the side of the table and flank guys and shoot them in the back, which is really... It's so fun. It's so awesome.
Yeah, so with playing a lot of other games, like you see your opponent's army on the side of the board, there's a definite limitation to how many different things they can do. There's a limitation to how many different things you can do. So often, like in a game, we played a lot of War Machine before, just as a background. You would sort of see how the game was going to go within the first 5 minutes, and then you would sit there for another 45, actually just playing the whole rock, paper, scissors out.
Sometimes. Well, there's a lot of thinking and knowledge about knowing what each of the sides do. A lot in War Machine, right? Because a lot of it was memorization and combos and stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot of thinking that's happening in the game. But if you have that all set up in your mind and there's like overarching powerful combos, you're right that oftentimes it's just like, let's see if like it's you already know 70-30 kind of thing, who's gonna win, and let's just see if the dice happen.
Yep. So in Infinity though, like the difference is also that there's the ARO system.
So yeah, so the order system seems like it would be super powerful because literally I can bring one guy up, and this is what I'm going to try and do: is I have a guy who advanced deploys up the table.
He's coming up the bottom side of the board,
and literally what I want to do is go around and use my 10 orders on that one guy and sweep his entire board.
Because that guy's got like a powerful weapon, he's got high armor.
Exactly, and if I can spend 10 orders, like in a normal game, you just shoot 10 times and kill all of the guy's opponents. But how do they balance that out in Infinity, right, is that there's an arrow system. So every single time you move a guy on your turn...
everybody that sees them gets to make a reaction of some form.
And they can possibly kill your guy because they're basically firing back at you. So it's like a lot of games have Overwatch. It's basically everyone, whenever you move, has a limited Overwatch ability. So you'll see when on the first turn, I think we're still deploying and we're just talking about who our guys are. But you'll see when I try to move, that one guy next to the white, like closest to us, next to the white box, when he starts moving, you'll see what happens when he moves up there. There he is. That's the guy.
He's going for it.
Yeah, he's gonna go for it. This is the first order of the game. He's coming. And basically what I want... So he's a hidden marker, actually. So Brandon didn't actually know what he was. I used to mini just because I was like, well, I'm going first. He's already deployed. He knows what's going to happen.
There's only a couple things this can be. So in Infinity, like you don't have to learn tons and tons of special abilities, but you can sort of learn... Core. There's a core of things to learn for like weapons.
The game is, to be fair, complicated. There's a lot of things. Like basically any kind of thing that you imagine you can do in a war game, you can do. Like climbing up buildings, like if you have grenades, throwing the grenades over the wall. Yeah. If you have a hidden guy that can kind of sneak around, all that kind of stuff is there.
Yep, so being sort of a cyberpunkish game, there's also a big hacking element to it, which adds a whole other layer to the shooting, which makes it quite fun. It's kind of like basically a version of Magic going on. If you've played lots of other games, there's basically magic in this, and it's called hacking.
Yeah, well, that's a sci-fi trope, really, when you think about it. Yeah. Which is why sci-fi is great.
Okay, so I think
it has everything.
So, are we past the point where you've made your big rush?
No, I haven't.
No?
Wait, have I?
Who knows?
No, that doesn't make sense. Oh, no, this is Shaolin. We started it, so I have to move the Shaolin first before I can attack you. So Shaolin are like...
There's a rule called Impetuous, which is sort of a phase that happens before each one of your turns.
And they don't listen to you, and they just rush the opponent. So they have to move directly towards the opponent and fight them. But to balance that out, they're really cheap. And again, unlike other games where just free movement is awesome, if you free move into the opponent's line of sight, they can just shoot your guy and kill them before they do anything.
Yep. So
that's free.
So having a free move sounds good in most games, but in this game,
it can get you killed.
You actually have to pay your real orders to not do this thing.
Yeah.
Because your opponent knows what these things are. They know they're going to move out in the open. So often you'll try and watch these guys to get the free shots on them. So for other things about how to, I guess, possibly get new people into this game, maybe for having them like choose an army.
Wait, I want to see if I can move my guy. Sorry, it's the very first order. Oh, here it is. So I'm making a coordinated order. Oh, there it is. He's gonna shoot. So I revealed that it's my second best guy in my army. He's a heavy infantry with a super high weapon.
Yep. So he's gone after one of my guys with a missile launcher. Not quite in the best range for my guy, but it's okay because there's so many bonuses.
I'm way advanced because I have like camo. I'm hard to hit, and I'm heavy, and I have really high ballistic skills, so I can kill that guy. And I'm rolling.
And I pointed to my dice, and it's beautiful, beautiful result as a crit.
It's a crit. So a crit means that no matter what you roll, so what's really deadly about a new arrow is that if you crit the opponent, you cancel out all of their hits.
And they get no armor save.
And take a hit. And he just crit me with a missile launcher, which does 2 extra rolls on top of that.
Yep.
And my guy died. So I was like, oh my god, very first order of the game, official order of the game, my best unit died, which was terrible. But I still had other guys. It was like 50 points, so I basically lost like 1/6 of my army right there. On a unlucky crit.
Before I've even started attacking.
Yes. So that's why you have to be very, very smart on how you're going to attack. So unlike other games where you just can like ignore kind of what your opponent does when you're moving, here movement, line of sight really matters. Because you can just get killed on your turn when you're trying to do something if you're not careful.
Yeah. So you want to make sort of a balance between how many guys are actually watching out for the guys that are trying to Rambo at you, and for how many guys you're just trying to hide them because you want to save them for later.
Exactly, and I could have seen like maybe I shouldn't have attacked you there because I was attacking with my most powerful thing against the guy that could kill him in one hit. Like most people can't kill him in one hit, although that guy had a decent chance if he won. He could have killed my guy. At the same time, my odds of beating him were so much higher, and if I killed that guy, I would literally have swept that flank. Like, I would have killed, like, 5 guys there and kept on going.
Yep, and then you would have a whole bunch of guys to go. You would control that whole chunk of the board.
Yeah, so it was a reasoned risk. It just didn't work out. And here I'm moving my second mistake. So, like we talked about, the mission is controlling a zone. So I moved up my other super powerful guy, 60 points, so even, 60 points? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Somewhere in that range.
Yeah. So 30% of my army, but I had to move him a little bit too close because I was afraid he wasn't in the zone. Later on, I realized that I should have known, considering he started in my zone. I should have known what should be outside of the zone. If he moved a little bit, he should be out of the zone. But I was stupid and moved him too far up. And no one could see him there, but you'll see what happens later on. We're moving just like 2 inches up, basically got him killed.
Because you often, if you want to react, you definitely want to have your guys in cover.
Yes. And I put him in suppressive fire, which I thought would be enough, but I had to move him up a little bit because I was afraid he was not in the zone, which I knew it was risky, but now you'll see. Hidden guys.
So right there, I've just brought on the Fracta, which is one of the airborne deploy troops, because I've now come to fix the problem since nothing else is close by, but because you can drop from the air, I've now come nice and close by. The Fracta's got nice weapons for close-up fighting.
Yeah, and basically if I was a little bit further away, I could have been both in cover with suppressive fire, which is super strong with a heavy.
And in the crappy range band for me trying to shoot with the boarding shotgun that the Fracta's armed with.
Yep, but instead I was not in cover.
Nope.
And out in the open and right in good range band for him, so he...
Did I get more criticals here, or did it just go really well for me?
I think you crit me once.
Yep.
And then it just went well for you for the second wound.
Yes, I think I got 2 dice roll. 2 dice that beat yours on the next one, and then eventually another 60-point guy went down quickly.
Well, this was at least your turn, so he didn't die on my turn.
No.
After the first one, I was like, And so here it is. I've lost like 1/3 of my army with those two guys, which is in some ways it's actually really cool to be able to pay to have two guys be 1/3 of your army, because this is a skirmish game, right? You only have 10 to 20 guys because you're playing like a Spec Ops team, so you don't need that many models to play the game.
No, if you have one really powerful guy, it can accomplish a lot on its own because it has the power of 8 other guys.
If you're smart about it.
Yes.
Or lucky.
Yeah. Absolutely. So my powerful guys in this one, though, are more based on their hidden aspects.
Yeah.
It's how I like playing Onyx. I mean, I wouldn't play every army like this, but certain sectorials lend themselves really, really well to your opponent not really seeing where your powerful pieces are. They might be more fragile individually, but say for the case of the Malignos, they've got TO camo, which gives major negative mods to being hit.
You're not even seeing them on the table right now.
Nope, your opponent has no idea where they are, so you bring them out at the precise moment. They're going to do the most damage to your opponent.
I hope that wasn't a weird thing. All right.
Oh well. We're trying new software this time.
Yeah, because the last one was terrible.
It was great and also non-existent terrible.
It seemed great. It looked great, but it was terrible at recording. So
do we want to talk a bit about how, like, to get... Like, if you're already into Infinity, how do you usually get other people into Infinity?
Have we talked enough about what actually makes Infinity cool? Like, we have talked about a whole bunch of things, but, like... When you got into Infinity, why did you get into Infinity in the first place?
It was probably the look of the game, honestly.
Yeah, like definitely for me too.
When you just see it and you see how beautiful the models are, it's not hard to be sold on it. Because there's kind of a look there for anything anyone wants. If they want to play like the army look, they go for that.
Sci-fi. For a sci-fi futuristic game, it looks great. Now it's not apocalyptic. That's one of the things. It's more like, you think about it like post-human kind of world, right? So it's, if you want super grim, dark, apocalyptic, whatever, there's lots of games out there.
Yes, but this is the shiny neon version of the future.
Exactly, right? And you're not playing the army trying to steamroll another army where the goal of your side is to commit genocide on the other player. You're playing a special, like a Spec Ops team, trying to do a specific mission, which makes everything make so much more sense, right?
Which is also really good because you don't need 50 guys and you don't need to paint squads of 10. You paint 10 guys, now you have an army.
Exactly, and it makes sense in the actual game. And you think about it in the future, really, is going to be a full-on combat. Shouldn't it all be like airplanes?
Shouldn't it just be drone-on-drone combat?
Yeah, exactly. It should be like a whole bunch of, I don't know, laser beams coming out from the sky from space weapons. Like, that should be the normal way that people fight. But if you're doing Spec Ops, now it makes more sense that you have a 10-man or 20-man team that's trying to do one specific mission.
Yeah, so another really good part of the game is that you buy one new guy. Maybe it's only worth like 20, 30 points, but that's like almost 10% of your army there, which is a big change in how the army can play. So if you want to change your army from one week to the other, you don't have to go buy giant chunks of guys. You pay,
and if you want to play it painted, which we always do, it's actually doable. Because you paint one guy, you put him on the table, and if you put a 60-point guy, like the guy that Brandon killed, or either of those guys, that's a huge change to your army, right? That's like, what, 30% of your army, possibly?
Yeah, there's guys that can be worth 30 of your army, and they're good.
Yeah.
They're putting a lot of eggs in one basket, but they can be good in certain situations.
Yeah, it didn't work out for me in this game, but it has many other times. Like, for example, if you had not crit my guy with my guy with the Spitfire at the very first turn of the game, that would have went well for me.
Oh, it would have.
Well, unless you crit me later on. But I did kill the guy that was one of the guys that was the most dangerous. And if I'd killed him, all of your other guys would half in firepower. More than half. Like, they'd be 1/3 as good at killing my guy, or something like that. Or no, even less than that.
They would end up with fewer shots because they're part of a team.
They'd have fewer shots and worse ballistic skill too.
Yes.
So that would have been amazing, but it didn't work out. So, yeah. Now, I'm not totally out of the game, though, because, like we said, this is a mission-based game. I will end up getting out of the game later on, but I wasn't yet out. I was like, oh, if I can capitalize, get a little bit lucky. For example, right here, you were cheering because were you cheering? Did you just crit someone, or were you just cheering because it was?
No, I think I killed something over
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Not something terribly valuable.
Yeah. So this time you were really lucky on your crits. I don't think I crit even one time, and you crit like 5 or 6 times. Usually it's like 3 and 3 kind of thing
Over the course of a normal game.
And it makes it so exciting because every one of your guys in general, most guys have 1 wound. So even though you have 10 guys, everyone has only 1 wound, and so
if one dice goes through,
yeah,
and you got lucky on that one dice, it makes a big swing in the game.
yes. So it keeps you on your toes, right? You have to be very careful, and that's why it's important also to have lots of terrain. And that's honestly one of the things that makes the game so much better than a lot of other games, is that terrain really, really matters. This is like, it matters the most in any of the games I play.
Out of any of the big war games.
Yeah, and there's, some games definitely terrain matters. And like even in War Machine, terrain matters, but
there isn't that much of
there's
on board.
not that much, right? This one, everything revolves around terrain, because getting cover, oh, he just crit me. And he's running around because it was like, all right, I got it. If this just works, then I'm back in the game. But he crit me instead of me critting him, and I'm standing there. I'm like, oh, I think I lost now.
This might be the turning point in the game.
I was like, come on, if things turn around, but like we already talked about, it's not going to turn around. I just got crit, and I'm like, oh, this is the end.
Yes, which is why.
Oh yeah, because this is a Shaolin monk. I engaged you, and I'm like, all right, I crit you because Shaolins in close combat, they're really good in close combat, and they're likely to crit the opponent, which is just a free damage, and then Brandon just
Crit and return,
and that's the way how you cancel it out. So you do cancel out 2 crits, and basically that meant I couldn't kill that Fracta, and it was kind of over. I didn't have enough orders to kill him.
And then I managed to control the zone because the Fract is worth quite a bit.
Yep.
And would not go away.
And I failed to basically kill him this round, and this was a mistake in my part because I did have a better way to kill him, but I wanted to punch him in close combat because it's fun.
That is one of the fun things about Infinity. Is you're forced to go back and reconsider all the decisions you made because there's so many.
Like, where did everything go wrong? A lot of it is
there's so many paths you could take, like literally physically through the board. You guys could take different paths.
Yep. And so I did have a guy just like Brandon had, the drop guy, which is Tiger Soldier, who's awesome. And I should have used him to kill Brandon's drop guy, but I did not. Instead, I tried to punch him in the face, and I just punching in the face, even though it's more likely to hit the guy. That Fracta has 2 wounds, right? So he's one of the tougher guys in the game.
So it's going to take a while to go down, and it's got a bit of armor on it.
Yeah, so I should have just tried to shoot him to death. So Infinity is, it's a future game. You can punch people, but it's mostly shooting, right?
The punching's mostly just like grappling with each other, you might argue.
It's slow a guy down mostly, and in general, that's when you want to do the engaging, right?
Yeah, you want to waste your opponent's time often.
Yep.
It's not the greatest way of killing in this game.
Sometimes it is, depending on who you're fighting, right?
Yes.
But in general, you want to shoot. It's more deadly.
Yeah, I guess one of the ways to get into combat is by using smoke, which most things cannot see through the smoke. Mm-hmm. And it also makes for a really good way to move up the board, so it's just another level of tactical considerations you need to think of if you bring it. But luckily...
And like we said, movement is so important, so being able to eliminate the guy from shooting you while you're moving, even though you can't shoot him, right, because no one can see through the smoke, it's a huge advantage.
You now can just create paths that didn't exist before. Yeah. They may have really good weapons watching you, and your guy has just a little tiny rifle, but if he runs past the missile launcher, then up close to a bunch of other guys, just go kill them instead.
Mm-hmm. Avoid getting killed. Yep. And even one guy in ARO can be dangerous, because let's say you do bring the super tough guys like I did, and you fight just the lowest of the low grunt. You roll a certain number of dice, usually 3 or 4 dice, and they roll 1 dice, right? And usually your chances of beating them. So basically, what we didn't even say this. When you do a face-to-face, when you roll your dice and they're higher than the opponent's dice, you cancel all the lower ones, right? Unless they crit. And a crit is basically, as long as you can succeed on your roll of d20, if you roll that number you need to succeed, that's a crit. And that automatically cancels out all the opponent's dice, and they automatically take a wound.
So there's a small chance you win in almost any circumstance.
Exactly. So you have basically a 1 in 5 chance, or 1 in 20 chance of the toughest guy to the weakest guy. You have a 1 in 20 chance of critting him and just doing 1 damage, which oftentimes when you have really powerful 1 wound guys, which you did have, that's amazing. Yeah, it didn't work out for me. I never crit this game, but
I think everything in my army there except for the Fracta is a 1 wound model.
Yep, that's right.
So this is my preferred way to play because you want to have a certain number of orders. You want to have a bit of redundancy in your army so you can win in more situations. Mm-hmm. But having one big cool thing also looks really cool.
Well, or just the heavy infantry guys, I think they're my favorite in terms of how they look. They're definitely they just look so awesome. They look so much cooler than let's say like 40k Space Marines and stuff. They have that kind of futuristic armor and everything. It just, I don't know, they look great. That's actually what sold me on the game. Two things. The light infantry and the heavy infantry, which is most of the
most of it.
Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yes. And the robots are really cool looking too. It gives you a bit of everything really to work with.
Yeah. And I remember when I was getting into the game, it was the look, right? So I had actually looked at Infinity a long time ago, I think in 2010.
Back in their second edition?
Back during their second edition. But they basically, there was 2 things, like they're constantly improving. And one of our friends basically bought this new box, and they're like, oh, we should try out this game, right? Because they had just released 3rd edition. And I'm like, oh, I remember Infinity, the models were not that great, so I wasn't that interested, because we're both very into models. Like, we've played miniature games since we were like 12.
Yeah, so it's been more than a decade.
Exactly. So when I looked at it, the first time, I was not interested at all because the models didn't impress me. And then 3 years later, I'm like, wow, what the heck happened? These models are some of the best models I've ever seen. And I literally don't know what happened. I guess they just got better sculptors, or maybe the sculptors just trained up or something. It wasn't even fully all 3D sculpt. It's not like they changed the entire medium. They just, I guess they started caring more, right? And they got a bunch of people that were really good at sculpting, and that just skyrocketed their quality. So when we looked at the models, I was like, wait, these are the same models? And then the crazy thing is that the models had changed enough that I decided to buy a little force, right? And the models since then have just gotten better. That's the crazy thing to me. Like, they're constantly upping their sculpt quality. And to me, they're like, in terms of miniatures games, they're the highest average quality of the game.
Yep, so they only use metal models, which a lot of games are plastic, which makes them nice to transport. They're nice and lightweight. Mm-hmm. But when you get used to the quality on the metal, like the crisp edges that let you highlight, the deeper recesses to do washes on them, you really just enjoy painting them a lot. And when you go back to painting other plastic things, like even Malifaux has really characterful models, but painting them is a bit more of a chore because just have to put more effort into it to make up for the...
The details are much more shallow in the plastic, right? So they can't do like small recesses and things as well. And and basically for Infinity, when I look at the models, these days they're really consistent. And the worst models in Infinity, in my opinion, obviously it's all opinion, right? Subjective. It's not all opinion, but there's a lot of opinion.
People can agree.
Yeah. The worst models are equivalent to like the nice models of another range, and then the nice models, like every range has some really nice models, right? But the nice models of Infinity, there's so many that come out every month, basically.
Yeah, they have some sculptors like JV Uria. I don't think I'm pronouncing the Spanish guy's name right, but they'll work for a lot of manufacturers and just produce hit after hit.
Yeah, and so I look and I'll be like, oh man, War Machine, I felt like their model quality has dropped recently, and then I'll see, oh man, this new sculpt looks awesome, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's
they do stuff for Infinity and the other games exactly. I like the look of.
It's just like these all-star miniature modelers, right? And every once in a while they'll work for these other companies and create hits. But the thing with Infinity is they have a very high bar, so they don't hire people in general that are not up to their standard, and their standard is very high.
Yes. So in terms of getting new people into the game, like a lot of them will walk by if you're at a game store and see you playing Infinity, and it's really the models that draw them to the game, I would say.
And the terrain.
Yes.
And the terrain, because most games, like we were saying, has no terrain on the table, right? It looks like an empty battlefield. Like in War Machine, you have 2 pieces of felt, and they're forests, and they factor really into the game, but at the same time, it just
anyone
doesn't look
watching
good.
it has no idea what they're looking at.
Exactly. It just doesn't look good. And even, I don't know, 40K, I think Hogtown is actually great. Like, we go and play at the Sword and Board in Toronto, and there's a really good group of 40K players, and they're great partially because they have so much terrain, and they play with a lot of it. But when you look at a lot of other people that play 40K, there's just not enough terrain on their tables.
No,
right?
Games Workshop will sell it to you, but regular budgets mean you have very little terrain.
Yes, exactly. Whereas, I guess because it's so integral into the game, whenever you see Infinity, they're filled with terrain. And they make it easy, actually, even when you start. They have simple paper terrain that you can use, and it looks okay, right? It's not as nice as this table that we have here that's like fully modeled and painted by Brandon. But it looks decent enough, and it shows you that you need a lot of terrain.
Yes, it's hard to say how much coverage you'd want, but you'd want maybe 9 small buildings.
Yeah, on
and
a 4x4.
Then maybe 20 smaller pieces, kind of like the size of the crates you see. So there's quite a lot of stuff. And then you can, if you want to get really detailed, you go all the way down to like having crates and other small scattered terrain on the board, because even one little piece of like one park bench a guy hiding behind can just swing the whole course of a game.
Yeah.
So the other thing about getting new players into it, if people are asking about how to like start an army, what's usually the first thing you'd suggest to them?
The awesome starter boxes, Ice Storm and Red Veil.
What, just for the price or because they look good?
For everything. So that's literally how we got into the game, right? Our friend bought one of these, the Ice Storm box. It comes with 2 7-man armies. So it's not a full army, right? Usually you need 10 guys for a full army. But it's enough to get you into the game. It's a starting force, and then you can pick up some small things. Or, actually, recently they released an expansion pack that gives you the full 10-man armies for both of the sides in Ice Storm and Red Veil.
So the Beyond Ice Storm and the Beyond Red Veil boxes.
Exactly. So it's like they understand Infinity, right? They need to get more people into the game, and so they created these two boxes. Both of them are 2-player starter boxes, right? So you can get it, and you get a friend into the game with awesome minis. And they also have an expansion expansion box that allows you to bring those 2 armies up to the full 300-point game. And you instantly have a decent army to go and start playing.
Yes.
Like a full game, which I think a lot of other games, for some reason, don't have that.
It takes a long time to get anything resembling an army.
Yeah,
it
exactly.
takes a lot of
and
money
it's only 10
and a lot of time.
models.
Yes.
Right? Like, I really hate the fact that I'm actually assembling a 40k orc army right now, and 10 models is not even a squad for me.
No. Nope.
And that's like, what is it, like 60 points or something, right? And I need like 1,750 points, and I'm like, oh my god, orcs for days, right? And even if you're playing a Space Marine, right? Like 10 guys, a Space Marine army, 10 guys is 1 squad.
And just transporting your armies around 2 and 40k, and even War Machine, you need...
It's so brutal.
You need like a shopping cart full of your guys to show up at the game store with.
And then the other annoying thing is, because you're painting so many models, most people feel like they have to batch paint it. Because if you want to play with painted models, that's what you have to do. Or you just spend 3 years painting your one army, right?
And then GW releases a codex making it no good.
Exactly. So it's so much better when you can just pick up 10 guys, you assemble it. You can even do it as a side thing while you're assembling and painting your models when you're doing this other game. And then once you're done assembling and painting those guys, try the game out. And what's great about Ice Storm and Red Veil is they actually come with training missions. So they bring you out, like the first mission is small. I think it's like, you take 3 or 4 guys, and they kind of, through playing, I believe it's 10 missions, you basically learn how to play the game. So both Red Veil and Ice Storm has like 6 or 7 missions that teach you the basics of the game. And then if you get the Beyond Red Veil and Beyond Ice Storm, they have, I think, 3 or 4 missions that bring you up and give you the details of the arrow systems and the things we're talking about.
They introduce new rules. They bring hacking in later on.
I don't know if they get to hacking until the very end.
No. That's okay. I find playing newer players, you just sort of skip, like the very beginning players, just skip hacking. It's just, it doesn't, it's a different interaction.
You don't even need actually to put it in the game. It's definitely a fun part of the game, but it's outside of the core mechanics. Like a lot of times people will play games that have no hacking at all, right?
Yeah, certain armies just aren't affected by it. Either they don't bring it, they're not affected by it. So you can sort of skip that for introducing new players. One thing for like new players that are considering it, I often tell them, is basically pick your army based on what you like the look of, because every single army can sort of play to different strategies. Either say if you want to go for a lot of heavier guys, like big hitters, most armies have a big hitter you can take.
Yep, a tag, a giant robot with 3 wounds.
Yes, exactly. If you want to play with a lot more hidden stuff, most armies can do that. Some do it better than others, but really, if you're going to paint a really, really good looking force, you want to buy the guys you think look the coolest. Like, whenever
of course.
So
well, I guess maybe that's not of course, because when I played War Machine, I originally chose an army because I liked how it looked, but I started picking guys specifically for how good they were for my army, and that, looking back on it, that was kind of sad. Well, I painted so many guys that were just because they were good in the game. I don't really care about Winter Guard, but I had a bunch of Winter Guard, which I think I've sold now.
Well, I guess the beautiful thing of Infinity is you can take a few guys, like since all the points are online in Infinity, they have the opportunity to rebalance point costs, which they've now reached sort of more of an even equilibrium point on where they want the points to be.
Yep.
But it means that everything is pretty much takeable. Maybe it fills one role in your army, and then you don't take more of them because you don't need to repeat that over and over. Like maybe you only need so many long range firepower. And it's actually good that they have like a free army builder, and all of the rules are online for free. So like they have the rule book, the paper rule book. Oh yeah, that's the end. But they do have a paper rule book, right? But you don't have to buy it to play the game. No, I would say that even reading it often is better to get people to teach you the game.
Yeah, they have a wiki actually that has all of the rules, so you don't even have to use like an old school rulebook format to learn the rules of the game. If you're the only person if you're the first person to start your community, right?
Yep,
you can learn from the wiki.
So the rulebook's basically a living rulebook, so you're not even worried that somebody's going to break something and this game's going to be ruined. You can actually expect, like, if something goes really wrong, you can expect it to get fixed.
Yeah, and then you just go to the wiki. If you don't remember a rule, you go to the wiki. It's just like looking up anything else on the internet, right? I type in Infinity Wiki and then whatever the term is, like spec fire, and I know exactly what it does, right? It gives you the wiki and it gives you all the instructions to play the game, which is so helpful when you're actually playing the game. Plus, they have the army builder, right?
Yeah, you don't need to show up with piles of books or piles of cards.
Exactly. I just bring my phone and I'm ready to go.
That's what
very sci-fi of it.
The game. That is very futuristic of it. I think we can end there saying it's a very futuristic game. It's how games will be in the future.
Yeah, I think, and you can see it, right? All these other games are starting to do that. Like X-Wing 2.0 has the army builder, and all of, I don't know, we haven't seen it, but they have an army builder. 40K is trying to do that as well, right? Malifaux has one that you have to pay for, and same with War Machine, which, Infinity, that's free, which is great. So yeah, it is definitely, everyone's going there. It's going to be mandatory, I assume, in like a few years. Like any new game, you've got to have
once the bar has been set, people have expectations,
or some of the people in your community will build one, right? If you are I don't know, if people like your game enough.
Yep. So for future podcasts, we won't just be playing Infinity. We're going to play lots of different games to sort of put our opinions out there on it. Yeah. In terms of the gaming sphere, what makes it good, what makes it not quite as good.
Yeah, and it's just Infinity is, I think, currently our favorite game out there.
It's our go-to. Go to the game store, play every week with a good group of people. So.
Yeah, and if you wanted to know the conclusion of that game, I got crushed at the end. I could have, even though I was destroyed like by people on the table at the very end of the game, if I was smart about it, my last move of the game, I could have tried to limit the loss to be, was it 6-3 or something, or 7-4, which is a minor win, versus what ended up happening was 8-2,
Yep. So if you're playing in a tournament, which Infinity actually lends itself pretty well to, having major wins versus minor wins matters.
Mm-hmm. I could have possibly fought to give him a minor win, but at that point I was like, screw it, and yeah, I got killed.
My dice won.
Next time I'll crit you. Don't worry.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, we've got to talk sometime about like randomness and what's good about what. Like I know a lot of people with Infinity, when they get into the game, they're like, oh, this seems so random, but a lot of it is that you just haven't really internalized the odds of the game and how it works out. In general, crits will average out over games, and even so yeah, it just makes the game more exciting.
Yep, it means you're not trying to math through everything. It means you just kind of try and enjoy yourself while you play the game. There's no point in overthinking certain things.
There actually is. When we play longer games,
it's much closer.
It's much closer and more tactical. Mm-hmm. So anyways.
So that was our first podcast of Dice Over Everything.
This has been Alan.
And this was Brandon.
All right. See you next time.
Enjoy your games.